Welcome, and we're going to be looking at light, low power riders. Now, if you fall into this category, you've got certain advantages and disadvantages, and we're going to look at ways to play to your advantages and to minimize your disadvantages. So, first of all, what do we call a light rider? Well, I would say if you're less than 70 kilos, in the 65 to 70 kilo range, you're kind of getting there. But I would call a true light rider something between sort of 55 and 65 kilos. And if you're less than 55 kilos, then you should probably go and have a decent meal, because that's probably a bit too light. But yeah, in that kind of range. So generally speaking, the heavier you are up to a point, the more power you're going to produce. Now, obviously, there are 60 kilo pro riders out there making 400 watts, and there are 80 kilo amateurs making only 200 watts. But generally speaking, the larger framed you are, the bigger skeleton, bigger muscles, you're going to make more power as you get bigger. But the weight will play against you. So you need to balance these different factors up and work out how you're going to optimize your qualities that you have. Now, if we take two riders, we're going to look at rider A, who is 60 kilos and makes 300 watts. That's roughly my case. And if you take rider B, who is 80 kilos and makes 400 watts. Now, that's kind of a situation that you will often see in Cat 1 races across the globe, that kind of rider, A and B. And if you work out their watts per kilo, they're both making 5 watts per kilo. So at first glance, you could say, oh, they're pretty evenly matched. They're going to be doing about the same performances in races. Well, not really, because it depends very much on the type of race and the tactics that you employ. Because the larger rider is going to go better in some situations, and the smaller rider will go better in others. Now, the smaller rider, if he's clever and he uses certain techniques, can minimize his disadvantages to keep up with the larger guy where he's not so good, and then go past the larger guy when the advantage can be, that card can be played. So we're going to have a little look at that now. So if we look at this example here, we can see two clients that we had on the tour recently, last year. Now, these were the two best riders in their group, and they're both knocking on 80 kilos, and I would say they're both putting out close to 400 watts. So good examples of rider Bs, and certainly making more power than I do. And it's interesting how these guys go very well on the flat, into a headwind. That's where your rider A is struggling, because there's just a power difference there, and the fact that you're light makes no difference. I mean, there's no advantage in being light on the flat, especially when there's headwinds involved. So that's really where the rider A suffers, and we're going to look at techniques and ways to minimize that disadvantage, so that you can keep up with the big guys when they're hammering it on the flat, and then later on, hopefully, when you hit the hills, you'll be able to go past them, because you're back in your zone then when you hit those hills. So we're going to be looking at that now and see how you can improve. Right, so rider A and rider B both go and buy the latest super duper aero helmet, and they both managed to shave 10 watts in economy at 40 kilometers an hour. Now, rider A has just made a 3.3% improvement in his aerodynamics, or the amount of power that he has to put out, whereas rider B has only made a 2.5% improvement. By the same token, if rider A goes from an 8 kilo bike to a 6 kilo bike, he's made just over 3% improvement in his weight ratio, and the larger rider, if he goes from an 8 kilo to 6 kilo bike, has only made a 2.5% improvement. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's critical if you are light and relatively low power, to be as efficient as you possibly can, whether it's weight or aero. And at the higher race speeds, the real number one is aero. But if you can have a nice light bike for the climbs as well, that's all to the good. But the real big one is aero. You need, because of your relative lack of power, you need to be cutting through the air as efficiently as you possibly can, because it's all that bit more important to you than it is to the larger guy. Now, although on the flat you have a big power differential, you have a slightly smaller silhouette. You present a slightly smaller surface to the air than the larger guy in theory. But that's not enough to offset the fact that you are simply making a lot less power. And my weak point has always been and always will be in races, riding into headwinds on the flat. I mean, that's where I'm pushing out as hard as I can, but the big guys are relatively relaxed and finding it fairly easy. So the thing to do, get yourself as aero as you possibly can. And I've done a number of videos that you can look at different ways of doing that, little improvements, little things you can shave off here and there just to keep yourself and the bike as clean as possible, so you cut through the air as nicely as possible. But there's other tactics you can employ if you're in a group riding that will help you as well. Now, I'm not suggesting you just sit on the back and never take a turn up the front, because you're just going to become unpopular. But if you use your brain a little bit, especially in a race situation, you can kind of make it work for you. Now, one thing, you need to be aware of where the wind is coming from. You need to know are you riding into a headwind, is it a crosswind, a tailwind, whatever. And one of the most important things I have on my Garmin is a compass. Now, if you know that the wind is from the west for the day, and you know that there comes a bend where you are turning away from that headwind, that's a great time to go to the front and take a turn, because you are not going to be having to push through that headwind. So if you know there's a little bit of an offset coming up, take your turn then, go to the front. And it's just little optimizations like that in a race situation will help you stay fresher and do better overall. Also, when you're in that group riding situation, make sure that you are as protected as possible. Find the biggest guy in the group, pick him out and get behind him. He's the barn door that is going to protect you for as long as possible. And you stick on his wheel as long as you can, because there's a big difference in being behind a big guy than a small guy. I know people have complained about being behind me because I'm small and aero, that they're not actually getting much draft. So the same applies in reverse. Pick the big guy, be nice and close to him. If the wind's coming slightly from an angle, like from the left here, put yourself slightly to the right to optimize that draft as it comes off his back wheel at an angle as well. So it's just basically making yourself as aero as possible within the group, and keep your position low. Train yourself to ride in the drops as much as possible, because if you're riding 35 and above, you want to be in the drops. That's kind of my marker, really. 35 kilometers an hour is the level at which I would put myself in the drops, depending on wind and things like that, but roughly. So if you can keep yourself aero, save your energy and act intelligently on the flat, you're going to arrive at the hills fresher. And that's where you can unleash your secret power, which is the fact that you are light and you are going to be doing well up those hills. And when you get to the hills, this is your domain, and you should be, in theory, a lighter rider should be lighter on the pedals, should have a higher cadence generally, and should be happy on danseuse out of the saddle. Should be able to spend extended periods out of the saddle. That's an advantage of being light normally. And yeah, you should be able to pull some distance on the rider B, because as well, psychologically, they tend to be a little bit afraid of hills because of their extra weight. So if you can make a gap there and make it stick, then you should be in the running. A couple of other little tips I would say is that if you do go into danseuse, do it when the wind is behind you, or at least not as a headwind, because you become much less aero when you come out of the saddle. So when you have a climb that does this, and the wind's blowing this way, you stay seated in this direction, you come around the hairpin, and then you come out of the saddle in this direction, and you'll feel that sail effect pushing your whole body as you go on this way, come around the bend, sit down again, and pedal this way. It may sound like a small optimization, but it works for me. And again, you know, the fact that you're light, however much it disadvantages you into a headwind, when you have a tailwind, then it's actually an extra bonus advantage for you, because that force of the wind pushing you has less weight to push, and so you will be proportionally benefiting more from a tailwind. So, you know, tailwinds, I love tailwinds. I mean, that's my thing that I just wait to happen, and it's fantastic when they arrive. And I feel like I'm flying. And that's my payback for the times when I'm struggling into the headwinds and really suffering. So it's you know, it's horses for courses really, and you know, you just have to look for your advantages as a light, low power rider, and use them as best you can.